Hello, everyone. My name is Justin Hall, and welcome to the April 17th, 2026 Interagency Transportation Equity Advisory Transportation Planning and Program Guidance Subcommittee meeting. This subcommittee's focus will be on elevating diverse and historically marginalized voices and will advise the California Transportation Commission, California State Transportation Agency, and California Department of Transportation on how to achieve meaningful outcomes in transportation equity, environmental justice, and equitable economic opportunities, especially as related to transportation planning and programming. The meeting agenda is located on the Commission's website at www.catc.ca.gov. Any document created for the subcommittee can be translated into any language you need. Email us at transportationeac@dot.ca.gov, and we'll have them returned to you as quickly as possible. American Sign Language interpretation is being provided for this meeting. You should see them on your screen. Spanish interpretation is also being provided. You can access this service through the Interpretation tab at the bottom of the screen. Use the Q&A tab if you have any questions about this. Live closed captioning is also available. Select the Show Captions tab at the bottom of your screen. There's a number of language options available to choose from. And speakers, for accessibility purposes, we ask that you please state your name before speaking. Committee members. All members attending remotely must visibly appear on camera unless you're unable to do so due to connectivity issues. If that's the case, announce the technical reason for not appearing on camera. Presenters, if you're on the agenda to make a presentation, please do your best to be succinct. Please remember to speak at a steady pace to allow our interpreting services adequate time for accurate interpretation. Members of the public, we welcome comments from the public as a part of each item at this meeting. You should see the webinar control panel likely located on the bottom of your screen, where you'll find the raise hand and Q&A buttons. Use the raise hand feature as soon as we reach an item, give the system time to acknowledge you. Committee staff will let you know when it's your turn to make your comment. Alternately, you may use the Q&A tab to submit a written comment. Committee staff will read the comment on your behalf. As a reminder, each registered attendee is provided a unique link and phone number to access the webinar. They should not be shared with other participants, as this can create confusion for staff when making comments. Again, do your best to be concise. Speak at a steady pace to allow our interpreting services adequate time for accurate interpretation. We ask you make your point in 3 minutes or less. If for some reason we have many speakers on any single topic, we reserve the right to limit comments to 1 minute if needed. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you, Justin. We'll now proceed with the land acknowledgement. So I'll go ahead and get that up on the screen. Would any member like to read the land acknowledgement? If not, I can. Michelle?
Yeah, land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land we now call California is the ancestral lands of over 109 nations, tribes, and peoples. The indigenous peoples of this area have a deep reciprocal relationship with the land as an original stewards. Their ways, their methods, and traditions have contributed to California's rich biodiversity and have impacted the transportation network for the state. We stand with the indigenous communities and are committed to participating and advocating for a more equitable and sustainable future. Our transportation network not only connects us to families, friends, work, and leisure, it connects us to our past and future. We embrace our past and a future committed to inclusiveness and equity for everyone who calls the state home.
Thank you, Member Rousey. Would anybody like to acknowledge the land that they're on? Martha?
Yes, I apologize that I am not in full view because I am in a route and I don't want to mess up the internet, but my name is Member Martha Armis Kelly. I am wearing a pink and tiger print silk blouse with jeans on. I am Hispanic and indigenous, of indigenous background, and I'm very happy to be here today with all of you. I just want to recognize that I am in Modesto, California today, and this is indeed the Miwok and the Yokuts territory, along with some Apache Mescalero tribes that have come out here, and the Paiutes with Chichansi. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Armis Kelly. Member Wong?
Yes, the city and county of San Francisco recognizes the land as the unceded ancestral homeland of the Rame Adush Ohlone peoples.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I'll now take us into election of the subcommittee chair. So at this time, we'll now be taking nominations for the role of subcommittee chair, and those nominations can be made by any subcommittee member or you can nominate themselves. So I will now open the floor. Do we have any nominations?
I nominate Lisa Alvarado.
Member Alvarado, do you accept that nomination?
I appreciate the nomination, Miss Member Armis Kelly. I'm going to hold tension and not deny, but hold the floor for anybody else in this space that was going to consider self-nominating or putting their leadership hat on.
Okay, thank you, Member Alvarado. Any other nominations? Member Alvarado, now that we don't have any other nominations, do you accept this nomination?
I see Member Torres Van Black coming off camera, and I'm going to ask to see if that was because they're interested in leading us.
Actually, I was planning to nominate you as well, Lisa. So, Member Alvarado. So, I'd be happy to. I think you'd be an excellent chair, and happy to support you if you decide to go for it.
Right on. Okay.
So I'm kicking myself off of the box because I want to tell you that I think all of the members that are here are quite capable and would supersede in the role of chair of this subcommittee. But I think that you have really stepped out and stood out to me because of your efforts in your work with the bicycle coalitions and the transportation and including ATP. So I would really like to just say consider that, you know. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Armis Kelly.
Member Alvarado, if you do consent to the nomination, do we have a second? But if you don't, that's okay too. We can revote at the next meeting.
I appreciate your sensitivity to my needs, Camille, because I'm deeply considering my capacity and how much I wanted to be present for my immediate community, but I do recognize the privilege it is to serve in a subcommittee capacity, and as a learner, I feel safe to, try with the members on the call. So I want to hold the tension for anybody that wanted to, though, because this is the space to self-nominate. And if there is nobody willing, I will begrudgingly accept this nomination, but I will pause. Okay, I accept.
And staff will be here to support you along the way. So yeah, we will hold your hand and walk in it together. Do we have a second for the nomination?
I second the nomination for Member Alvarado to serve as chair.
Okay, so we have a motion from member Armis Kelly and a second from member Torres Van Vleck. At this time, we will proceed with a roll call vote. Clerk, could you call roll call?
Yes, will do. Carrie Kimi Hernandez. Lisa Marie Alvarado.
Should I abstain?
You're so... Martha Armis Kelly says yes. Aye.
All right. Armis Kelly, yes. Peggy Martinez. Andres Ramirez.
Yes.
Michelle Rousey.
Yes.
Randy Torres Van Vleck.
Yes.
Howard Wong.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Hey, congratulations, Chair Alvarado. Um, so Carolyn is going to send you the chair's agenda to facilitate the rest of the meeting if you want. If not, staff can still facilitate the rest of the meeting. But while Carolyn sends that, I can go ahead and move us into public comments not on the agenda. Do you have any remarks for your chairship before we move on?
I'm just gonna share thank you. I appreciate the nomination. I am excited to say surprise first. This is not something that I planned on stepping into, but I do take this serious. I do take leadership very serious. I would love the support of the staff this time around. I am zooming in on my cellular device. My laptop is not alive. So if y'all can support me and just know that in my chairship, I will show up to serve y'all in a greater capacity next time. But I appreciate this nomination and I look forward to this season with y'all.
Thank you. Okay, now we're moving into item 4, public comment on non-agenda items. Chair, do we have any public comment?
I'm gonna check in on Justin, perhaps, if we have any public comment.
Oh, sorry, I meant clerk, not chair.
No worries then. Thank you, Chair. No, I've not seen any request to comment at this time.
Okay, great. Now we'll move into adoption of December 2025 meeting minutes. Our last meeting was in December, so we'll also proceed with roll call vote for minutes. So clerk, if you can take us through roll call vote again.
Do we get a motion in a second?
Motion, yeah.
I make the motion to approve the minutes from December.
Okay, motion by member Rousey. Do we have a second?
I'll
I'll
second that,
second.
Andres.
Okay,
Okay.
second from member Ramirez.
Great, thank you. Carrie Kimi Hernandez. Lisa Marie Alvarado.
Aye.
Martha Armis Kelly.
Aye.
Peggy Martinez. Andres Ramirez.
Aye.
Michelle Rousey.
Yes.
Randy Torres Van Vleck.
Yes.
Howard Wong.
Aye.
Chair, the motion is approved.
Great. Do we have any public comment on this item?
At this time, I do not see any request to comment on this item.
Okay, then I'll move us into our next agenda item, which is a presentation on the California Freight Mobility Plan by Kaylin Pacheco, who's the Caltrans Office Chief of Strategic Freight Planning. So Kaylin, if you're ready, Carolyn can go ahead and share screen and you can take it away.
Great, thank you, Camille. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Kaylin Pacheco. I am the Office Chief for Strategic Freight Planning within the Division of Transportation Planning here at Caltrans. And This presentation today is a follow-up to the presentation that I gave at the October Equity Advisory Committee. So it's been quite a while since I was supposed to present in January and then had to move my presentation to April. So my apology for the delay. Before I get started, I do want to let everyone know that I have had some technical difficulties. So if I do disappear from the screen, I have also joined by phone. And so thank you to Camille and Carolyn for controlling the slides. So I should be able to see the slides and continue on with my presentation, even if I'm no longer present on the screen. Next slide, please. Okay, with some of the efforts that we're doing with the California Freight Mobility Plan is a significant amount of outreach and engagement. And we've had some opportunities to get the word out about the plan. So we've made efforts to do our outreach and engagement, but we've also had some resourcing constraints. So even though we have been limited, we have collected quite a bit of data through our survey instruments and getting the word out through our social media posts. So we focused our efforts on social media outreach through Caltrans Facebook, X,
Caitlin, I think your sound dropped out. Caitlin, excuse me.
Kaylin, we still can't hear your audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Oh no, how long did I just drop off?
The last thing we heard was social media outreach on
Oh dear.
X.
Okay. Okay, let me go back and cover that. So we have done outreach, social media outreach through Facebook, X, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We've also participated in 15 public events and committee meetings over the past 9 months. We continue to provide the QR code and link to the Caltrans engagement portal through emails and our monthly freight newsletter that the Office of Strategic Freight Planning circulates. I do have a list of all of the events that we have presented at. So if anyone is interested in that information, please let me know and I can provide that to you. Next slide, please. Before I share an update on the data results to date, I do want to let everyone know that I'm presenting results from the MaptionAir platform and the Caltrans engagement portal separately. Once we close out the survey instruments in June, all data will be compiled, analyzed, and incorporated into the California Freight Mobility Plan, which I'll refer to as the CFMP for the remainder of this presentation. And all of the data will be shared as infographics and tables. Results from the MaptionAir survey represented on this slide are from June and July of 2025. This applies to all data collected for this survey instrument. We had a total number of visitors of 1,638. This includes all visitors who submitted responses, didn't submit responses, and bounced visitors. 477 submitted respondents clicked done at the end of the questionnaire. Their comments and questions were collected. 1,060 unsubmitted respondents may have answered some questions or none, but did not click done, so we may not have captured their responses. 101 bounced visitors viewed the questionnaire without answering any questions. So the map on the right does show heat spots of respondents statewide. There were the respondents in Southern California, specifically in the Inland Empire area, were strongly represented for this survey. The map also shows heat spots of respondents statewide, other areas of the state. In the Bay Area, Sacramento, and Eureka, there are some bigger hotspots, and additional representation of respondents for the remainder of the state are scattered on this heat map. Next slide, please. And this slide is a summary of the public survey responses utilizing the Caltrans engagement portal. As of April 1st of this year, a total of 14,360 individuals viewed the survey. 298 participated in the survey and provided a total of 4,817 responses and 667 comments to the survey questions. The Caltrans engagement portal does not have a mapping feature like MaptionAir does, but our CFMP support team will compile the geographic data and will be plotting the regional data points on a map to incorporate into this plan. The next several slides, I'll be sharing some updated results from each survey instrument. My team is in the process of consolidating the results to create one infographic for each survey question. So compiling from both of the survey instruments. And once that is all combined, it'll go into a report, and the data analysis work will be completed, and then it will go into the plan as well as a separate report. Next slide, please. Oh, it looks like there's a question.
I know that you're kind of used to the acronyms, that you threw me off with that CMP, or I don't know what that is, and just for even just for those that are listening, it's kind of important to just kind of be able to tell us what those acronyms mean, because
Sure.
I didn't know. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Yes, the CFMP is the California Freight Mobility Plan. It's our long-range freight plan, state freight plan that
Yeah, I was familiar with that. I think I heard you wrong. That's why I didn't know what you were talking about.
Okay.
Thank you, though.
Yeah. Okay, next slide. This slide shows a summary of the public survey responses using the Caltrans engagement tool as of April 1st. Or is that that's the previous slide? This slide shows includes two bar graphs for the industry survey responses collected from the MaptionAir survey instrument. Our industry responses were considerably lower than anticipated, with only 30 or so responses from industry folks. This was back in June and July. The bar graph on the right includes a breakdown of industries who provided responses, and a majority are coming from the trucking industry. So this helps us see how and where we need to focus our efforts in the near future. Next slide. This slide includes a graph for the industry survey responses collected from the Caltrans engagement portal, current as of April 1st of this year. Our industry responses using this instrument collected approximately 100 responses from the industry folks. Similar to the previous slide, This graph shows a breakdown of industries who have provided responses, and a majority are coming from the trucking industry. And this one even indicates a larger number of government agencies. This information, again, will help us focus future outreach efforts on less represented industries. Next slide. This slide shows a bar graph for the question, are you aware that California has a state freight plan? This survey reached a significant number of respondents who were not aware of the state freight plan, which at the very least helped to raise awareness of the effort. There was a smaller cohort of respondents who had heard of the plan but were not clued into the purpose, and over half of those respondents went through the entire survey and submitted their responses. Only a small portion of respondents to the public survey had heard of the plan and had previously provided feedback indicating the survey had reached a wide range of new groups and audiences. Of the 477 submitted responses, 370 indicated that they didn't know about the freight plan, and they didn't even know what freight was before completing the survey. Next slide. Similar to the results in the MaptionAir survey instrument, this Caltrans engagement portal survey, this diagram bar graph does show that the breakdown in percentages is almost identical. The slide for the same question shows that 175 submitted responses, and of those, 130 indicated that they did not know about the freight plan and didn't even know what freight was. Next slide. This slide includes survey results for the following question. How important is freight to the state and local economy? The 783 respondents, 74% said that the freight is absolutely essential to our economy or very important, while less than 1% said freight is slightly important or not important at all. The MaptionAir survey results highlight some of the impacts and concerns for communities across the state. Next slide. For the same question, utilizing the Caltrans engagement portal, how important is freight to the state and local economy? Of the 164 total respondents, 89% said that freight is absolutely essential to our economy or very important, while 3% said freight is slightly important or not important at all. The survey instrument highlights some of the impacts and concerns for communities across the state, such as the importance of the movement of agricultural goods. Rural communities say that freight is vital and essential for the economy through local retails and online shopping and delivery services. And this is just to name a few. And this is going to be really, really helpful when we write our plan and do some of the analysis, including this information, but also we can use this to do further interviews and outreach and engagement. Next slide, please. This slide provides some of the comments provided regarding positive and negative impacts of freight based on the question above, how important is freight to the state and local economy? A complete list of comments will be compiled and included in a report and will be summarized and included in the California Freight Mobility Plan. I'll read a few of some of the comments and impacts that we've heard about so far. So the positives is the access to goods, convenience, economic benefits, lower consumer costs and faster shipping, support for local businesses and infrastructure. On the negative side, freight impacts could be traffic congestion and commute disruptions, air quality and public health concerns, noise pollution, road damage and infrastructure strain, decreased quality of life, and equity and environmental justice concerns. Next slide. So now I'll summarize some of the demographic data that we collected for each survey instrument. For gender, 63.7 stated they were female, 35.1 male, 1.3% other. For race, 80.9% were white, 7.8% Asian, 4.6% said other, 4.4% Black or African American, 3% American Indian, Alaskan Native, 1.1% Native American, Native Hawaiian, and other Pacific Islander. This slide is missing the ethnicity information, but 19% stated that they were Hispanic or Latino, while 81% said they were not Hispanic or Latino. And then the third chart on this slide is the income category. 94.7% indicated they were over the federal poverty level, while 3% stated they were under the federal poverty level. Next slide. This slide shows a breakdown of some of the demographic data collected in the Caltrans engagement portal. Can you guys hear me okay?
I could hear you okay. It had a pause.
Yes, my screen froze. Okay. For this slide, for gender, 52% identified as male, 42% as female, 4% preferred not to answer, and 2% other. For race and ethnicity, 63% white, 13% Hispanic, Latino or Spanish, 10% preferred not to answer, 4% American Indian or Alaskan Native, 2% Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander, 2% other, and 0% for Black or African American. For the income category, 89% were over the federal poverty level and 11% preferred not to answer or stated other. This percentage may include households under the federal poverty level.
I'd like to ask a question, I'm really concerned about these demographics and these numbers. Is this the last influx of data that you're taking in? Is this a summary of what you're going to assess your matrix on? Because I'm really concerned when you're looking at the data and not seeing that there's a disproportionate representation of the people that are actually impacted by all these negative inputs, and conversely, the positive as well. But for the fact that the areas that you are affecting is not even represented in this survey, it really kind of makes me wonder, are we still gathering information, or is this the last?
We are still gathering information, and we will keep the survey open. The plan is to keep it open through June 15th. If we need to keep it open longer to make sure that we are gathering information for our underrepresented communities, we will keep it open. We're also wanting to do some targeted interviews. We've reached out to so many of our different our local agencies. We've reached out to our CFAC members, just trying to get the word out, trying to solicit for opportunities where we can present at community meetings.
I say to many people that are doing outreach, it has to do with the time, it has to do with where you're doing your outreach, and it has to do with the methodology behind your outreach. Like, that's a
Agreed.
big, significant amount of people that are primarily affluent and are looking at economic approaches as their, I guess, their premise or platform for success. Whereas people are in survival mode, and they're the ones that need to be also aware of what's happening in their quarter. Freight and goods movement is important for the vitality of California, but it's also something that is also been blighted for those that have been in disadvantaged communities. So it's really important that we show an intentional and methodical approach on how to do the outreach. And I'm remiss if there's that's not included in this report. What methodology you use, because now more so than ever, community groups are centering around the methodology of community engagement versus just saying we have exhausted our resources and we have talked to X person and we have got the word out, because we need to show what methodology we use, and that's just something that I have to bring forward, because it's important to be equitable in our approaches on how we gather the data and also how we represent the data.
I agree.
Can I add to that? This is Michelle Rousey. I think when a lot of times when we do outreach, there's part of that population that it is just kind of left out too, and I'm wondering, like others, that we need to do outreach and think of outreach in a different way and make sure that it's accessible to everybody in a way that we meet them where they're at. And that means reaching out to the disability community, to our seniors and others that might be impacted greater than the population that you actually have represented at this point. I'm also concerned about the demographics, because I know when it comes to our transportation and our resources around transportation, especially about our public transportation system, and how even the freight is affected by our lower income people, and they're not represented a lot in this survey. So I'm just wondering what outreach still needs to be done, and if we can hit that population too, and make them understand that their input is needed, not only needed, that it impacts what happens as a whole, and so that they understand the importance of their feedback.
And thank you for your questions and your comments. We have, we've reached out to our 671 community to try and schedule times to, or at least for some of the community events, if it's not my team going in person, we're trying to work closely with our districts to see if they can be in attendance and hear the concerns, share out the information that we have, and to increase the numbers where we are very, very low with disadvantaged communities.
I love how you're already thinking about this, Kaylin. I guess just to input what I'm hearing from Martha Armas Kelly, what I'm hearing from Michelle Rousey, and what I'm also personally feeling too is like, as the body within the IAC, we're specifically looking at the gaps. We specifically come from these spaces. And so as you're giving us this presentation on what you're finding, we're likely going to be wanting to give you feedback on how can the team get into those spaces. So I think maybe we, as a disservice, we did not like preface to the team here, right? Like what this presentation was and if there was going to be an ask. So is it okay for us to kind of give you this, feedback like this? Is this supportive? Is there a way that we need to be like framing this? Does it need to be broken down within this body where it's like, this is the first presentation, and the second time we see Kaylin, we'll be hearing, the work that that particular body did to go get some of the folks that we felt were not a part of the data.
Yeah, and I think this is the second round. We'll definitely be doing one more in between now. Taking the information that we have, compiling all of it, and really targeting those groups that are not represented. How do we get those numbers up? And that's my ask as part of this presentation. How do we improve? How do we reach out to some of these communities when we have not, there hasn't been a lot of responses, even though we have, reached out to ask, hey, can we share at any upcoming community meeting? I mean, we have been limited to virtual only because of travel restrictions, but that doesn't mean we can't tap into our folks in our district offices, and maybe it's coordinating with our MPOs, our TPAs, to help get the word out, and targeting these groups. So that's exactly what the intent is of this presentation, is to kind of pinpoint, how do we move forward? Who are the stakeholders? And how do we reach them? And that'll come a little later in the slides. And it looks like Randy has his hand up.
Yes, thanks for the presentation. In regards to stakeholders, have you engaged for like a sit down with California Environmental Justice Alliance, SAHA? They're connected to statewide network of environmental justice partners. I think it'd be a good idea to reach out to them and
Okay.
meet with them when they're available and provide the presentation and see if they'd be generous enough to offer you some leads on who to talk to and to help forward some of the materials to environmental justice community organizations.
Thank you so much. I have made a note of that.
Hi, everyone. This is Peggy. I was thinking about the folks that we met with or that came and presented to our meeting when we were in Riverside. And maybe you are aware of that group, but they were very much affected by how freight moves in Riverside County and San Bernardino and those areas. So I don't remember the community names, but
Was it part of AB 98 for the city of Paris and Moreno Valley? And they were talking about some of the logistics facilities and mapping that out for truck route plans and circulation elements, which also tie into general plans.
it may have been, I mean, the name of the group, I do not know, but I think that a lot of the parents that were at our meeting, a lot of the or community members that presented were very interested in how, I just think I think they would want to take the survey. That's my point.
Okay.
That's all. Yeah.
If you remember the name of the group that put that meeting on, I'd love to get that information and reach out.
Okay. It could be that staff might know. One of our members,
Anna.
Thank you. Yes.
Anna
will
Gonzalez.
know. Anna Gonzalez will know the name.
In fact, she invited them. And they're part of her group as well.
Okay,
group.
Thanks,
you.
Gloria. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I have made a note of that as well. This is helpful. Thank you.
I guess remember Martha Armis Kelly, I guess what going on with what Lisa said, it's not so much the fact that the data, it just really makes me wonder like how the data is, I guess, compilated before we actually get like the true picture. And so I guess maybe we need to do this so that we could see really where this data is coming from. But I mean, we have to look at things like charrettes. You have to look at things like pop-ups, laundromats, churches, groups outside of the box. They don't necessarily have to be environmental groups. They could be, like I said, nonprofit. They could be, a faith-based organizations, parent or organizations that are in those communities, and really intentionally target those groups so that you could get their purview, get their understanding, and be able to get a real, true representation of what they see and what they need and what they're feeling about the freight and goods movement. I mean, looking at the Central Valley, for us, it's like we don't want to recreate the same model that was done down south because they're heavily burdened.
Yeah.
Their air quality is even more burdened than it was, and the infrastructure, and the destruction of the roads and the spaces, that all plays a great part that was not really vetted out before the design was created. And so this is where we really have to be intentional, and we really have to be mindful of how we get that information so that we can get a real, true logistical perspective of what it could create for our communities. I'm just trying to say, I get it. I know we have our timelines and things like that, but we do need to have good data, not just one-sided.
Right. Thank you.
Kaylin, would you be able to run us through the remainder of your slides and then maybe position us with an official ask so this committee will actually be able to, get you names and emails of the potential bodies that we're going to be hunting for surveys for?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Next slide, please. So some of the key takeaways are listed here, and we just talked about some of them, but obviously so far what we've collected is not a complete picture of where we want to be. This is just a snapshot in time of where we're at. So the results will be reevaluated upon completion of our outreach and engagement efforts. And again, we're missing some key demographics. We're missing some key industry groups that, it's just a small sample of what we were hoping for. So we'd like to beef that up and have a more robust list of results. Next slide. And these are some questions that came up at the October Equity Advisory Committee meeting. So I wanted to take a few minutes and I'll read the questions and provide some responses, and it may trigger some more questions. I'll do my very best. I hope I'm answering them the way that you were hoping that I would answer them. So the first question is, has the CFMP reached out to unions and at port places of work? And we did solicit feedback from port and union representatives who are members of the California Freight Advisory Committee. These include the California Association of Port Authorities, Future Ports, Port of Hueneme, Port of Long Beach, Port of LA, Port of Oakland, Port of San Diego, and the International Longshore and Warehouse Union Local 18. We still have some time to target additional outreach to unions, but we are going to strongly encourage our CFAC members and attendees to take the survey and share the link with their stakeholders again. We do have a California Freight Advisory Committee coming up on April 28th. So this is a specific ask and a request for our industry stakeholders, and we'll let them know that the survey will be open for a couple more months at least. Our team has looked at opportunities to share information about the CFMP, but we are looking for additional outreach and engagement opportunities with underrepresented groups and for the freight sectors. And if there's any outreach opportunities that you would like to share, please let me know, and then my team can reach out to schedule any meetings. And second question, how does the survey result survey data differentiate white and Latino populations. So the MaptionAir survey instrument included a race and ethnicity question separately. So race included white, Asian, Black, or African American, American Indian, Alaskan Native, Native Hawaiian, and other Pacific Islander, and other. The ethnicity question was Hispanic or Latino or not Hispanic or Latino, and the breakdown will also be included in our report and in our freight mobility plan. The Caltrans engagement portal has race and ethnicity combined, which was an unfortunate oversight on our part, and there's no way to differentiate the race breakdown separate from ethnicity. So it's they either responded white or Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish as part of the results. We will be addressing this in the plan and correct this for surveys that we conduct in the future. The third question that was asked is, do land ports of entry include inland ports? Yes, land ports of entry do include inland ports. The California Freight Mobility Plan provides an inventory of California's commercial ports and includes a brief description with land acres, number of cargo terminals and equipment, channel depths, if applicable, top imports and exports, and transportation access options. And then the next question is, how does the CFMP address AB 98? AB 98 requirements and information about this legislation or law. There's AB 98 and there's also SB 415, which is basically amended language into AB 98. And it will be included in the plan, and it will lay out the requirements for Caltrans and our California Freight Advisory Committee. Caltrans does have an internal process in place to begin reviewing draft truck route plans and circulation elements as they're developed. Currently, cities and counties within San Bernardino and Riverside are beginning to work on the required elements of the law. While Caltrans doesn't have land use authority to make decisions regarding development and expansion of logistics facilities, Caltrans will provide feedback and concerns when it comes to proposed truck rerouting and the impacts that will have to the state highway system. And specifically in the law, it does state that cities and counties must divert or redirect traffic away from sensitive communities. That's schools, that's residential areas, hospitals, care centers, parks. So rerouting some of the traffic onto new routes, we just need to make sure that the infrastructure is in place to handle those larger trucks, depending on load sizes. We just have to make sure that they do align with the current code and regulations that are spelled out. So we are looking at that. We're heavily involved with that process. The last question is there any kind of guidance on the visibility clearance of vehicles? Some larger vehicles have limited visibility. So the DMV does provide guidance in the California Driver's Handbook, Section 7, Laws and Rules of the Road. There is some good information and recommendations in the handbook regarding larger commercial vehicles. Caltrans doesn't have any guidance documents on the topic, but commercial truck drivers do receive this information as part of their training and testing before they get out on the road. Next slide. So this slide shows our critical milestones. So nothing has changed as far as our timeline since I presented in October. The IIJA reauthorization still requires California to develop and adopt a plan every 4 years in order to be eligible for National Highway Freight Program funds. So same cycle, it has to be done every 4 years. So we're currently working on the draft of the plan through the end of 2026. The review process will start at the end of 2026 through June 2027. Then it will go to Federal Highway Administration for review and anticipated approval by September of 2027. And final adoption and release of the plan by December 2027. Next slide. And I'm almost done. I'll try to wrap this up really quickly. So you all received an invitation to participate in the survey last fall. If you haven't had a chance to complete the survey, I encourage you to do so. In addition, my ask is that you share the surveys across your networks. That will help us expand our reach and final push to hear from more communities and industry representatives. If you have any suggestions for outreach opportunities, including virtual in-person events, please let me know. Again, I want to mention that our survey will close on June 15th, but we will still conduct interviews and outreach to target specific demographics and freight industries that are underrepresented. And next slide. And thank you. This concludes my presentation, and I'm not sure if we have time to take more questions. But I'd be happy to do so. Or if you have follow-up questions for me, we don't have time for them today, please send them to me, and or any opportunities to get the word out and target some of the groups that are not represented, I would be very grateful. So thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Kaylin. We probably have time for one more question before our next presentation, but members feel free to email us questions that you didn't get to ask, and we'll make sure Kaylin receives those. Member Wong, I see your hand.
Yeah, I agree with several folks who said that it's best to reach out to coalitions and groups that are already affiliated around issues. For instance, in Cisco, we have community environmental groups in the low-income areas of the city already who have been working on environmental justice. For instance, in the Bayview Hunters Point, southern part of San Francisco, where highways and trucking have, there's a lot of data about higher levels of asthma, cancers for decades. So there are groups that are working on these issues throughout the state. And I think that's the key, to find the groups that can distribute the survey to their interest groups.
Thank you.
Can I just say quickly, it's Peggy, that I really appreciate how accessible you made your presentation. I really appreciated all of the reading and the graph descriptions. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Kaylin. I'll be sure to get you information for Ana Gonzalez and the recommendations for the folks that gave public comment. I also have a recommendation for the California Center for Environmental Justice Network. They might be good folks to engage in D6. And then I think a challenge to the committee is when you see Kaylin Pacheco in your email box, please remember this face and this effort. And we have until June to make a dent into these survey respondents. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for this opportunity. And if you'd like some like me to report out at a follow-up committee meeting, I'd be happy to do so, and just to give you progress on where we're at, and meeting our target groups. I'd be happy to do so.
I think that's a great idea for building an accountability practice. Maybe if we can chat online after I learn how to get into this chairship and engage this committee properly, I can come back and engage you better.
Thank you.
everyone's input and the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks.
I know that we have another presentation. Staff was going to help me gear that up. Oh, Camille's already on it. Right on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chair Alvarado. Our next presentation will be on the Caltrans Transit Policy Update and Implementation Plan by Josh Pulverman, who's the Caltrans Office Chief of Transit Planning.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Let me just ask for a request there to be able to share. Great, thank you. So, good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Josh Pulverman, and I am the Office Chief for our Office of Transit Planning in the Division of Mass Transportation. I believe we've made a couple of different, presentations to the larger Equity Advisory Committee. Not sure if we've addressed this subcommittee in the past, but we thought this would be a great opportunity to meet with everyone to provide some additional updates now that our transit policy has been published. So I'm kind of going over, what that means, what it entails, and then this is also a great opportunity with our listening sessions in full swing to help advance our policy implementation action plan. So we thought it would also be prudent to utilize this time this afternoon and this committee to help us start to explore some of those potential actions. So towards the end of my time this afternoon, I do have a couple of discussion questions that I'd like to pose to the group. Again, to help us advance our work on moving this policy forward. But I'll talk a little bit more about that in the listening session process and kind of tee that up shortly as we get there. But just to kind of start out here, so real quick, as I've been doing a lot of these presentations lately, I've come to realize that not everyone might be familiar with what we're doing in terms of the director's policies and what those mean. So for anyone that's not familiar with our director's policies, these are meant to provide the department with fundamental direction for our departmental activities. They cover the department's philosophy, so reflected by the department's purpose, mission, and vision. And they provide broad organizational issues and provide specific strategic direction. So with that, building on the director's road safety policy, which was DP 36, and the complete streets policy, which was DP 37, the director's policy for transit, DP 40, establishes the department's first enterprise-wide framework for advancing transit. The director's policy for transit supports climate, equity, safety, and community goals while providing clear direction for delivering transit priority projects on the state highway system. This policy establishes a clear blueprint for the department's roles and responsibilities, including delivering projects that incorporate transit priority facilities. So this slide here is meant to provide a high-level overview of DP 40. So at its core, this policy shifts us from thinking of highways as just vehicle corridors to thinking about them as multimodal corridors that better serve the traveling public. DP40 establishes the department's statewide commitment to supporting and expanding public transit as an essential strategy for meeting California's climate, equity, safety, and community health goals. This policy ensures that transit is a core part of the state highway system and ties directly into our other guiding principles, including complete streets and road safety. There are a few key ways that we're doing this. One is building transit priority facilities, so things like transit-only lanes, queue jump lanes, and signal priority to improve reliability. Another is really leaning into partnerships. So the policy emphasizes collaboration with transit agencies, tribes, local governments, and especially underserved communities. And third is using data and technology better. So we're making smarter decisions and tracking how things are performing. The policy directs district transit plans to identify where transit improvements are needed most on the state highway system. And it also ensures all transit-related projects comply with state codes governing funding and project development. The policy also provides key definitions for transit priority facilities, transit supportive facilities, as well as underserved communities. So under DP40, we have 5 goals that really rise to the top of what the main purpose and what we're trying to achieve. So those are, 1, accelerating and improving transit efficiency with targeted infrastructure upgrades to facilitate faster and more efficient transit. 2, as I mentioned previously, we want to build transit priority infrastructure on the state highway system. 3, in addition to transit priority infrastructure, we also want to focus on building transit supportive facilities on the state highway system. Transit supportive facilities include operational transit priority facilities, as well as pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure amenities, multimodal connections, and infrastructure that supports transit stops. 4, we're looking at increasing transit planning. So that's, furthering and getting our district transit plans completed and rolled out. Our policy implementation action plan, as well as our state transit plan. And 5, developing data to support planning and project delivery. So what I have up on the screen now here is our kind of schedule for what we're focused on over the next 2 to 3 years. So we have a phased rollout of Caltrans transit guidance and policy tools that are currently underway and again planned for delivery. So I've denoted the items that are specifically tied to Senate Bill 960. There are 4 of them, and there are asterisks associated with those. So that would be the transit policy, the development of a project intake and process report, development of transit guidance for performance metrics, and then developing transit priority design guidance. So we've already made some progress with developing mobility hub guidance, which is complete and published. We're also actively developing guidance for managed lanes and bus on shoulder operations. As I mentioned, one of the 4 that are part of 960, the release of our transit policy, happened on February 2nd of this year. So that is complete and done. We're currently, I see a hand that is up. Do we want to address that question now?
I can hold my question to the end if you prefer. But I do have a question about the priority and design guidance and who's working with a lot of these plans around curb cuts and other accessible features.
So that would be our division of design. We are working closely with them on those features, but that is something that comes out of our design guidance that we work with our transit design team.
To kind of follow up on that, the reason I'm asking is over the few years, and currently, with a lot of our public sidewalks and curb cuts and light switches and things like that, I'm finding interference with sidewalks and curb cuts and stuff that are made in an unsafe way and are continuing to be built that way all of a sudden. And so at any point that I would love to talk to your guidance and people in how they're doing that design and how that impacts our communities, because I'm seeing it all over my community right now. And I'm in a power wheelchair, so those type of designs and for our blind community and things like that, it impacts us greatly. And I'm seeing the design flaw that's coming out time and time again all over the place. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, and I appreciate that comment. Thank you for bringing that up. We are working hand in hand, and this is something that goes from the state level, the local jurisdiction, the transit operator, itself, the local. So this is something that we're working in coordination, and we do have this guidance that we are working to develop that will take all that into consideration.
Thank you.
So yeah, this kind of rolls out our kind of progress again for the next couple of years here on what we're focused on in terms of our transit implementation plan and things that we're focused on. So I want to take a moment to highlight how equity shows up directly within Senate Bill 960. SB 960 calls out DP 37 and makes it clear that walking, biking, transit, and rail aren't just transportation modes. They're strategies for achieving statewide goals around climate, health, and equity. So if we want communities that are socially and economically vibrant, we need transportation systems that serve everyone. So the second part focuses specifically on buses. The legislation acknowledges that when buses are slow or unreliable, it deepens inequities that are already built into the transportation system. So many Californians who rely on transit don't have another option. So if a bus is stuck in highway congestion or running behind, it directly affects people's ability to reach jobs, school, healthcare, and everyday destinations. By giving transit priority on the state highway system, whether that's through transit lanes, signal priority, or other treatments, we're helping buses move faster and more reliably. SB 960 requires Caltrans to define underserved communities. So, in order to ensure that we're including everyone when we plan and deliver projects funded through SHOP. So, how do we figure out which communities are considered underserved? Well, Caltrans identifies underserved communities using two criteria. One is low income status. So, that means looking at census blocks where the median household income is at or below 80% of the statewide median, or the median household income is at or below the county's low income limit set by the California Department of Housing and Community Development. The second thing is tribal land status. Here, Caltrans considers census blocks that are either within or adjacent to tribal lands, as identified in the SB 535 disadvantaged communities criteria. So I mentioned, earlier that we are engaging in listening sessions to help us develop our policy implementation action plan. We're holding again a series of 7 listening sessions that will help us to gather feedback from our partners on various topics, including design, infrastructure and funding, equity, performance metrics, maintenance, and permits. Again, the outcome of these sessions will help us to inform the development of the Transit Implementation Plan, which is a companion plan to the Director's Transit Policy. So, specifically, and this is where, I'm going to kind of open it up now, and I think we wanted to use some of the time allotted to the subject, but with our equity listening session in particular, coming up, in the coming weeks, that's something that we are currently working to get on the calendar. But we thought that, today's discussion would be a great opportunity to open up some discussion questions to get your perspective as transit users and to share priorities based on your experience. This isn't the only time. Again, we will have this opportunity for a larger, listening session focused on equity. But since we did have this opportunity, we thought this would be a great time to pose a couple of questions and, utilize this as an extension of that upcoming, equity focused listening session. So the first, kind of question that I wanted to, put out there, and hopefully we can either track these through some notes, or I don't know if we have the ability to put things into chat, but I'll try to write these down and kind of feed these responses as well. But the first kind of question that we wanted to pose as part of this discussion is, from a transit user's perspective, what should Caltrans prioritize to make transit easier to understand and navigate, especially for new or occasional riders?
I think accessibility of the internet and other resources available to people, whether about how to use the transit, what they need to be able to use the transit, trip planners, which are all available through web-based and other ways, because it's not just an internet that is used by and we still have a digital divide with a lot of our seniors that just haven't quite jumped all the way up to using the internet completely. So we need to remember that when we're making things accessible. I mean, once you make them accessible for one population, you're making it accessible to everybody for as information and how they get it and are able to utilize the transit system.
This is Peggy. Sort of echoing what Michelle is saying. So that however it is, can you hear me, by the way?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Um, yeah, the accessibility of information, so the digital information, however you guys create all of it, really needs to comply with the various web content accessibility guidelines and the app accessibility guidelines. I love the idea that you're, partnering with people, with local communities. I think that's great. Um, just thinking out loud a little bit. As we know, the highway system is massive and it's huge, and there are portions that, go through very remote areas, and I'm sure that, you guys will discuss that, but I'm thinking in terms of when a highway system is in the middle of a town, how that connects with the local transit system. Michelle's points about the accessibility of the infrastructure, the sidewalks leading to the facility. Is there plentiful sheltering for people? I know that that's a challenging thing for various reasons, but it's hot and the sun is out and very, very, very hot in some places. It's also very cold in other places. So just managing how you will, some of those uh, places where people will wait, and I think are really important because people will use transit when it is safe, convenient, um, you know, all of that kind of thing. So I'm sure you guys that's being discussed. And I just want to ask this one question to the staff of the EAC.
Yep.
Chances are other people have been getting transit or Caltrans transit planning um, requests for participation, for the listening sessions. I just got one today, and I wondered if that would be considered as part of an EAC, um, like sanctioned task, if you will. So staff can let us know if that would be something that, I mean, I think a lot of us are asked to attend lots and lots and lots of meetings. So I just want to know if this transit planning session would be part of an EAC activity. Thank you.
Got a lot of head shaking, Member Martinez. So I think that you will have some staffs reach out to you, and I'll follow up on that too as a
Thanks,
similar
Lisa.
question.
Thank you.
Member Wong.
Yes, I think the people who are in most need of transit are probably the ones who are the least uh, uh, willing or able to communicate their needs. So we have many lower income people, for instance, forced to move out of the urban cores and are commuting hours to their job. In San Francisco, we have commuters coming from 2 hours, 3 hours away. And the cost of transportation increasingly becomes a bigger and bigger part of their overall, um, you know, budgets. Rather than just trying to get outreach, it seems that we already have existing data about what people need. We recognize that there are transit deserts. Transit deserts are areas where people have very little access to transit. They may not only be in the rural and suburban areas, they're also within cities, within San Francisco, for instance. We have communities with less transit than other areas. Um, we also have data on transit modal share. Many places in the Bay Area have far less transit modal share of all trips, which means people tend to drive much more than they have transit. San Francisco has about 23% transit modal share, which is considered very good in the United States. But overall, the Bay Area has 5% to 7% transit modal share, which means most people drive, even in the Bay Area, which has extremely good transit compared to the rest of the United States. So I think that just using existing data, not necessarily depending on surveys, one could start distributing funding to have quicker projects, quicker investments that add transportation choices to the marginalized areas of the, Bay Area, the suburbs, the rural areas, and the underserved communities within cities.
Mhm. Thank you.
Love to contribute as well. I want to echo on the infrastructure. I ride the bus everywhere, and everywhere nobody has Wi-Fi on the buses. So what does that mean? You do not take virtual payments. Nobody takes virtual payments. So that means I always have to carry cash. As a woman of color who takes the bus at all hours, I don't like to have cash on me. It makes me feel uncomfortable. So we're talking about a safety issue when you don't have the bus infrastructure. And I say that because I was in Cambria, and exactly what Peggy said. Cambria is a completely different vehicle when talking about transportation. So I was there on the weekend, which meant the first two buses don't go out. So you're not going to get transportation until like 10 a.m. I didn't know that. So I went to go wait for the bus at 8 a.m. And then someone on the street saw me and said, hey, on the weekends it doesn't run. So I didn't have cash on me. So then there was nothing open. So then I had to walk all the way up back the hill with my luggage, right? Because I'm kind of like stranded. It leaves a bad taste in my mouth as a transit rider when I'm in this most beautiful place. I'm starting to think people don't want buses on the freeway because they're an eyesore. So you start to get that culture of like transportation ridership is something that is for folks that are in poverty, not something that is of leisure and of luxury. So you miss out on those quote unquote luxury things that actually make transit like liquidity, right? So that small thing about Wi-Fi is massive. When I ended up staying the weekend and I ended up taking the weekday route, you saw people that were working, so they're using the Wi-Fi on the bus to like get on social media, like access their email. So if they're able to use the Wi-Fi for that part, then they should be able to use that to take commerce payments. Another thing is bike racks. You cap out at two. If we want people on bike to actually look at transit, we got to look at getting creative with some of that transit infrastructure or looking at bike boxes as a viable thing at all of our transit stations. I go to these transit stations because I have to wait. There's nothing but a roof and maybe a water fountain where the water isn't good and full of nitrates. So if you really want to look at like planning transit as a means of serious, like everybody's going to look at it, water matters, Wi-Fi matters, the people that are visiting the places where we're waiting at those hours. You can even have a conversation about the economics, right? Like what is, like Howard said, there is data about making places feel safer without having to do the work yourself. I'll pause there since it's 3:33 and I know you had other questions, but thank you, Joshua, for giving us time to engage with you on this.
Yeah, and I just wanted to echo the point about the bike racks and the additional infrastructure and looking for some of these I guess amenities that enhance a writer's experience, and that's part of that transit supportive facility that we really want to zero in on, and providing these services at bus stops that help support prioritizing transit, making it something that is going to be more appealing to writers. So I appreciate bringing that up, and I'm glad that is kind of along the lines of things that we are making a concerted effort to improve and add on. So I just wanted to kind of echo that. And if we don't get to all three, that's fine. But I do have one more, here at least for sure, that I wanted to another question. This is, how should Caltrans and its partners define and measure equitable transit outcomes, and what metrics actually reflect the rider experience. So this is looking more so at things that we can measure in terms of equitable transit outcomes being that kind of that key term. And I realize too, some of these might be things you might have to think about. So if there's a way too that we can follow up, maybe if there are things come to mind later on. I know my contact information will be on the end of this presentation. But as you're thinking about this too, we are again developing those performance metric guidance. So again, these are things that are going to help us to develop, look at, again these measurable outcomes that we can, these tangible things that we can, list as things that help us look at measuring the effectiveness of transit.
Mm-hmm.
This is Peggy. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I want to just say a few things real quick. The things that Howard has articulated here, this information is there. I just can't imagine why you'd be asking this question when people have answered it a million times through the years. What makes transit usable? This is not a new idea, and it's honestly frustrating that we would be asked this question again. This is information that is completely available. And I think it's time that Caltrans digs a little deep and finds information that people have spent years creating. That's it. I'm done. I will stop.
Yeah, I also wanted to add to that the data shows that the people who use transit the most are the low income and the disadvantaged, disabled people and senior people. In San Francisco, that's a large share of the ridership on the municipal railway of San Francisco. And for many commuters, transit is a necessity. Without it, they couldn't get to their jobs. And they're already challenged getting to work at night for nighttime shifts. Restaurant workers, even in San Francisco, have a difficult time getting to jobs for restaurant workers and waiters and people in bars. So we kind of recognize where the problems are, and as I mentioned before, the data on transit modal share of every city, every rural area, every suburb is available. So we know where transit is very, very lacking. So how do we measure success? Well, the normal data is to increase transit modal share for everyone. So instead of a single digit transit ridership share, you have to start moving to what other countries and other cities have done over the last years and decades. Many cities around the world have 40%, 50%, 60%, 70% transit modal share. So if that isn't achieved, then you haven't succeeded. And we actually have been going backwards in San Francisco and many other cities in California. Transit modal share has been declining, even with the expenditures of billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars on projects that actually start to decrease transit ridership unbelievably. So the motto is to look at what other cities and other countries have done and just, do the basic things to create transit availability and reliability.
Michelle, for some reason, it's not coming through.
Is that better?
Perfect.
that better?
Perfect.
Okay. I agree with the two members that just spoke. I think, you know, that information is out there. It's just how you gather it and how you get that information in a way that is productive for you, and that you can use it to get outcomes that people actually reflect what people are using and how they use it. Because our transit system, I think, is used by the most vulnerable people in our communities. But resources for that and finding out information about how they use it and things like that aren't always in an accessible place for you to access them. So you need to dig down because it's there. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Real quick, another thought. You know,
Peggy?
this new train, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. I
Okay.
think you and I were talking at the same time.
Okay. Like that Marin rail, oh God, Sonoma
Smart,
Marin.
smart.
Thank you. Yeah, it looks like that's being used by a good chunk of demographics. It's not all, you know, disabled people and whatever. It's got a lot of people on that thing. So what are they doing? Well, that'll help you figure out what to do, because we need transportation to be used by everybody, and it is used by everybody in some places. And I think Howard's advice is so important. And he has said this time and again to everybody that asks. He says, look at what other people are doing. To me, I feel that like reinvention of the wheel is really frustrating. Um, get your info, you know, make sure your information and your payment stuff is all, you know, technologically current. And you know, you guys know what to do. I just can't, it blows my mind that these questions are being asked again. Okay. Sorry, Lisa. Done now. This time for sure.
No, that's okay. I think it's helpful to share with Joshua that, this body within the IEAC, we meet people within Caltrans often. And so what happens is what you're feeling is, we get a glimpse of the culture internally and we feel the progression towards engaging in community. But, unfortunately, you're with us in, the shortfalls. And so, myself as 100% transit rider, I stand behind my colleagues and what they say because, I am the rider that they're talking about, right? I experience the shortfalls when we don't do the basic data hunting. So this is not a reflection of you or your presentation, right? Like this is a reflection of where we are when we're talking about what is the state of California's transportation. um, so yeah, maybe in terms of accountability and how we come back into closing and actually opening this up with some sort of progress is, could you maybe engage with the folks internally about who has been elevating, what Howard has been saying, what Peggy has been saying, what Member Rousey and I have been contributing, um, and
Yeah.
could you try building a policy that already has some of this? I don't know how to say this, but like exactly what Peggy is saying, some of y'all are paid to have this data. Like, is there a way to where we're being used to maybe vet it? Maybe we're being used to like help with accountability. How can the IEAC help achieve, I guess, what you're trying to achieve? Is this making sense to anybody else, or am I just now blabbing too?
No, it makes sense to me. We do have those individuals within the department that we've been working with, and we do have that core information that is being brought up here, and I do understand that. And I do take that those comments to heart about bringing these back and the repetition. But yeah, I was just trying to see if there was anything else that maybe we didn't already capture. Again, maybe from just a single writer, those that are out using the system. But overall, no, we do have that, and I do understand some of the frustration maybe of seeing those all the time, and that was not the intent to do that. But yeah, I do appreciate the feedback.
Anybody else in the room want to give contributions to Joshua's presentation or anything that maybe was contributed by the other members?
Yeah. If not, I had one more thing I just want to mention too before we close out.
I say take us there, Joshua. I don't see anybody with any hands raised.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, thank you for kind of that open-end session. That was all, very, very valuable. And I do appreciate, taking some time out of this topic to kind of run through that. And I just wanted to close by highlighting our Transit Advisory Committee. This is something new that the department is rolling out in the transit space. We've had our California Walk Bike TAC. This is similar but focused on transit, and this is a new external facing committee that we're rolling out as a means to work directly with our partners. The goal of the advisory committee will be to provide input and recommendations to advance public transit. So strengthening our partnerships across transit service areas, helping to promote equity and accessibility, informing transit-related policy development, and enhancing our community engagement. We do have another week and a half that this will be open for nominations to be members of this initial round of the committee. We do again have 20 members that we are looking for. This will be comprised of representatives from transit agencies, local governments, community-based organizations. Really, we have a wide net here that we are casting to reflect the geographic, demographic, and place type diversity of the state. So urban, suburban, rural place types, all of those. We will be closing the nomination period on April 30th. And we hope to have our first inaugural meeting the second quarter of this year. So hopefully around the June timeframe. And then members will serve a 2-year commitment on the committee, and we'll do another round of nominations then. So on as this matures. But I just wanted to add that in. That's something we've been promoting. So I just wanted to close out there with just highlighting this opportunity, and that wrap up my portion. And again, I appreciate the time this afternoon.
Can we get that sent to us just by chance? That way we can pass it and share it with our communities. Thank you.
Yes, I can share the link to nominate.
Thank you, Joshua. Appreciate it so much.
Okay, thanks, Josh, for presenting. And Chair Alvarado, do we have any public comment on this item?
I'm not seeing any request to comment on this item at this time.
Okay, great. That will bring us to our wrap up and next steps. So the Transportation Planning Subcommittee will reconvene in June with a continued focus on transit. If you are interested in reviewing the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Improvements Program grant, make sure you fill out the interest form by April 24th. That email with the information was sent out last week, but let staff know if you need it resent. Also keep an eye out for agenda briefing signups for the May business and executive meetings that will be sent out on Monday. Any questions or comments? Chair Alvarado, would you like to adjourn the meeting?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm still thinking about Joshua's presentation and wanting to be like, maybe we need transit buddies. So yeah, let me come back into this space. Thank you guys so much. It's Friday, and we just did a bunch of heady stuff. And I want to say thank you to the emotional body too. We brought up some anger. I know that that was real, and I always appreciate the fire that comes from this place. So thank y'all. I really look forward to seeing what kind of good trouble this committee gets into now.
More frustration, not anger, you know?
I'm interpreting it as tension, and tension is the seed of good things. So I appreciate it, Peggy.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. Thank you, everybody. And I really appreciated Joshua's presentation. So I don't know if he's still here, but maybe I'll send him a note and thank him because I appreciated it.
Yes,
Yeah, I felt
I'm here.
Oh,
Thank you.
right on. Okay, thanks, Joshua.
sweet. All right, y'all. You guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Right.
Thank you.